If you're here, then you are likely interested and passionate about UX research, about getting into the space, into the field, but you're not sure exactly where to start. You're transitioning from data science or program management or even a non-tech related field. Today, I'm here to share a few tips on how to do so. So let's get started. First of all, a brief introduction about who I am. This is actually my first YouTube video, so I'm really excited to be here. I never really thought I would actually get on YouTube, so this is kind of a interesting and big step for me. I am a design researcher. I actually started my career in visual design, taught myself how to design like mock-ups when I was like in high school. I was doing a lot of web design, a lot of logos. I was working as a software developer for about 2-3 years. And then I kind of realized that I wanted to make a switch. I wanted to really get back and tap back into my creative side to really understand, how the consumer on the other side of my product was using the product rather than just, what I was building and how it was functioning. So from there, I got my master's degree in human computer interaction at Georgia Tech. But in total, it took me about 3 years to really transition into a research position. Definitely had a lot of struggles and learned a ton as well as in grad schools. But I was able to break into one of the largest tech companies as a researcher. So the reason why I'm here today is to talk through, what are the things that I think were the most valuable for me, even if you don't go to grad school. Now things like boot camps are extremely popular, right? So regardless of where you're starting from, whether you're entry level, whether you have absolutely no experience, whether you have a little bit of design or research experience, what I want to share with you today are some tips to help you navigate your job search. So before I get started, the first thing I want to say is that UX research is really kind of a skill-based discipline, meaning that it's one of those fields where you really do need experience to gain experience, which makes it kind of tricky once you're, if you're coming right out of your bachelor's degree or a master's degree, you may not have the experience that you need to go straight into a research role. But with that being said, there are a ton of different ways that you can do this, right? So nowadays you have folks who are getting UX certificates, boot camps, or going to grad school. And I'm not going to say that one is greater than the other. Granted, I can share from my experience that I do feel like my master's degree gave me not just the skill, but also the deeper knowledge of human factors, human-computer interaction, and really the psychology behind research. But I do think the key output at the end of the day is building a body of work that shows that you not only have the research knowledge, the understanding of different methods of how to conduct different types of research, how to synthesize data, how to conduct research across the end-to-end design process, but that you have the work that shows and really demonstrates how you've done that in a team, a collaborative environment. I think that's really the key, and that's what really you should be looking for regardless of if you're in a boot camp or a grad program. You should be looking to build that body of work to build your confidence and your experience conducting research. You know how to make your work stand out. Because right now, to be honest, the job market is kind of crazy, right? We have layoffs, just a lot going on in the tech as well as design research job market. So you really want to be able to stand out. I'm going to walk through 4 steps that you need to take in order to transition into a UX research field. You don't have to take these steps, word for word. I'm very much a process person. I love kind of following different processes and creating processes, but I don't think that it's one size fits all ever. I think that there are some foundational learnings that you can take from these steps, but it may look different for you based on where you are. So the first step is to know your why. I personally think this is the most important step. Coming out of a boot camp or a certificate program, any sort of learning program for research, what you really want to do is make sure that you have a clear understanding of what your values are, what your career goals are, why you're interested in research, how your background kind of fits into that as well. So that way, your portfolio, the way that you talk about your work, the way that you talk about yourself and you present yourself is going to be unique, right? It can't be replicated. I think this is one of the most important steps, because what you want to do is make sure that you really know the type of research role that you're looking for. When I was in grad school, I knew that I was really interested in inclusive research, inclusive design. And so I started to brand myself and really just try to align myself with roles and people people in different companies that were doing that type of work or having those discussions. And one of my first roles was at Microsoft, where I was able to get into inclusive design research. I was able to conduct research around accessibility, and that was a space that I knew that fueled me and that just made me feel like I'm doing work that actually matters. So you want to be in alignment with, first, who are you? What are your values? What makes you unique as a researcher? What are your strengths as a researcher? And as you're looking for a job or trying to tailor down, this is what I want, this is the type of work I definitely don't want to do, or the type of industry I'm interested in because it aligns with my future goals, then you're kind of, you're taking those steps towards that. What you're putting out is also what you're going to get back in. So you want to make sure that you're attracting what you want as well, and not different positions or team cultures, company cultures that are really just going to be in misalignment with who you are, and at the end of the day you may be unhappy. Second step is that you want to build your craft. This is where now you really need to understand research as a whole, understanding research methods, how we interact with technology, what are some of the biases that technology has, what are some affordances of different types of design, different types of interfaces, experiences, and just getting that body of understanding of design and research, I think, is the first step. There are a couple of ways that you can do that. Online learning is absolutely a great option if you can't get into a grad school. After you have the basics down of the psychology of design, of research, then you want to start getting into more tactical work, right? So understanding research methods, understanding the end-to-end product design, product life cycle, and how research fits into that, understanding how to ask certain research questions. So there are a ton of different things that really go into a research education. This video in no way is supposed to supplement that. I think that a mix of certificates, boot camps, reading online, going to grad school, there's just so much information out there, and I think a good mix of that is really going to be helpful, because you want to make sure that you understand the basics and can speak the research terminology as well. I'm actually going to include on my website an ebook that has some of these basics that you want to learn. It has some of my favorite resources that I use when I was transitioning from research and even just applying to grad school, so that I could get a basic understanding of research. I think that's a good place that you could start. I also list out some different programs or grants that you can apply to if you're interested in grad school and need some ways to fund it, especially if you are underrepresented. I was kind of building my body of work, my portfolio around research. This was before I got into grad school. I was actually looking for contract roles. I was taking my design work, so my visual design work, and finding ways to conduct small research, whether it's concept testing. I used tools online that were free. I would go to my friends and ask them to be participants, but I was trying to find ways that I could really be scrappy and take what I already had and turn that into research projects that also seek out smaller research projects. Funny story, when I was actually consulting as a software developer about 7 years ago now. A lady on my flight who owned a bookkeeping company, and she was so sweet, and we ended up talking about how she really wanted to revamp her website, and I was like, oh, well, I need projects for my portfolio because I'm trying to get into UX research. So that was one of the first projects that I took on. I actually did a complete redesign. I went online, I found different websites where I could get participants to do concept testing for different pieces of the website, and I ran surveys as well to understand what are the core user tasks that the website needed to adhere to. Definitely a really scrappy way to find a project, but I think that's really what you have to do, right? I think it's also about finding ways that you can take what's around you, what you already have. Maybe if you're in a position where you have projects where you could potentially do research, so many tools online that you could use for research, right? Google Forms for surveys. You have user testing, you have different panels online that you can use to conduct quick interviews, or Zoom, right? You can use your network of people around you, start to build a body of work that at least shows that, you are not only learning, you're in the courses, you're in grad school and a boot camp, but you're also taking up projects on your own and kind of finding ways to conduct research and to learn about research as you go. The third step is now you need to package it all up. What does that mean? That means that all of the work that you have put into, kind of knowing your why, really articulating and bringing out your personality in your work. Number two, in actually gaining the experience, building your craft, working on different projects. Now you have to package that up into a portfolio that really represents your work. I think that a portfolio should be a great representation of what your research process is. It should also showcase that you have team experience, that you have experience with a variety of research methods, and that you actually have work that showcases not just your understanding of different research methods like surveys and interviews, diary studies, but you actually know and you have justification of when you would choose a certain research method over the other, when certain research methods are appropriate, what the affordances are of certain methods over others, and all of that you can kind of read about, but once you can showcase and you can demonstrate that in your portfolio, I think that is what really creates a winning portfolio. In my ebook, you can find some of my favorite portfolios, some examples of portfolios I think are done really well, and some tips for creating a great portfolio. Here are a few tips for portfolios. Number one, quality over quantity. You want to make sure that your projects are detailed and that you're really surfacing projects that either have the most impactful results, where you used a variety of research methods of mixed qualitative or quantitative methods, or where the problem scope was maybe a bit more challenging, a bit more complex, and you really learned a lot from that project over others. So you don't want to have just, let's say 5 different projects just because you want multiple projects. You want to make sure that any project that you put on your portfolio you can speak to really well, but you also have results that you are proud of, that can demonstrate your understanding, your experience in research. So, don't worry about having a ton of different projects, but you want to make sure you at least have 2 or 3 that are very detailed and that are very thoughtful in how you put them together and the work that you actually did. The second tip that I have is that you don't want to overdo it. I think that the way that you structure your portfolio in each project is also very important. So you don't want to have too many details and too much text to where, it's not really clear what your research process is. As a recruiter, as I'm scanning through looking for, or you're a hiring manager looking through the details of your portfolio, I'm seeing, all of your survey plan, I'm seeing your research plan, I'm seeing your interview script, I'm seeing pictures of your brainstorming session, every single design alternative that you went through, I'm seeing pictures of everything. You don't want to have too much. What you want to make sure is that, again, it is intentional. So you're surfacing the information, the pictures, the details that are relevant and that showcase that clear structure. So again, in my digital ebook, I have some examples of some really well done portfolios as well as my portfolio, just to show you what that can look like. The second thing that you want to package up is your resume. And I actually have a masterclass on this. It's called Kickstart the Job Search. And I actually go through a very, very detailed example of what your resume can look like and should look like for research positions. And it's a template that you can kind of plug in and use, but really the idea is I have different tips that show you what you need to highlight on your resume so that it's scannable, it's legible, and it stands out as well. The fourth step is closing the loop. What this means is really mastering the interview. One of the most important things that you can do in research interviews is know how to tell the story of your work. I think it's one thing to say, okay, this is what I did. I started with interviews, I was exploring the problem space, and then this is the work or the research that I conducted, and then I analyzed and synthesized the data, and then I reported. Sometimes it's kind of clear when you're talking about your work, but you're really just talking about the textbook process of what you should do in a research project. But if you're really able to tell the story, if you think of a story arc, for example, right? If you can properly set the context, why was this problem important? Why was this research space important? What was the driving factors for why the research was conducted? And what are the nuances of the problem space that you were looking into? I think being able to start from that beginning and really setting that stage before you get into, okay, this is what I did, and also being able to talk through why you chose different methods over another method, why you conducted the research in X amount of time with X amount of participants, being able to really talk through your sample size, the reason for the research methods that you chose. Those are all important parts of telling the story putting the pieces together so it doesn't just sound like, you're reading from a textbook of, okay, I did X number one, and then number two, number three, number four, the research process that I saw on Google. You're able to really bring the interviewer into what exactly you were looking to solve, what the problem was, why you made the decisions that you made to land for the insights that you had. Being a good storyteller is something that it takes practice, but it's absolutely doable, and it's something that will really help you as you're talking through your research projects in an interview. One method that can help with this is just using the STAR method, where you talk about the situation, the task, the action, and the results. Another tip is you really just want to have confidence. I think sometimes it's not really what you say, but how you say it as well. When you're in the interview, you want to start off with this aura of confidence. Not that you have all the answers to everything, but even when you don't know the answer to a question, you can acknowledge that, and you are able to speak on and acknowledge what you do know and what you don't know. I think that is important as well. The interview and closing the loop is all about practice. It's about practicing and knowing what are the different question types that you are going to be answered. I talk about this in my one-to-one Get Interview Ready session. I talk about all of the different phases of UX research interviews, the types of questions to prepare for, and what to expect in each phase. For example, you want to practice people and project types of questions. In a behavioral interview, you might be asked people questions such as, tell me about a time where you had to deal with a stakeholder or a PM or a designer who was not really bought into the work. How did you reel them in? Tell me about a time where you had a very difficult stakeholder that you had to work with. So you're going to want to practice those types of questions. Then you might have some project-based questions as well, and these may either be hypothetical or just based on your work and your portfolio. So you'll be asked to justify, why did you choose certain methods? If you had less or more time, how would you change your research plan? You might also get some hypothetical questions where you're asked a scenario such as, how would you design a park for 4-year-olds in Austin, Texas? And the whole point of a hypothetical research question is to assess how you talk through your process. And that process is different for everyone, but foundational steps are typically the design process. One example of this is the double diamond methodology, where you're talking through problem discovery, definition, developing the research, and then delivering it as well. So whatever process that you are most comfortable with and you're familiar with, I want to be able to practice talking through different types of hypothetical questions using that methodology. Now, these are some of the things that I talk through in my one-to-one sessions, and you can book those on my website, hopetalks.design. I've talked through 4 different steps that you need to just be aware of and to really think through as you're transitioning into UX research. I think that these steps might look different for everyone based on where you're coming from, the type of education that you have, or that you're seeking to get in research. But I think the core foundation is you want to really first start with, what's your why? Why are you in this space? Why are you interested in research? How are you going to gain the knowledge? What are you going to go to grad school? Are you going to choose boot camp? What can you afford it? But really the output of that is you want to build a body of work that you can now showcase in a portfolio, to showcase what your work style is, how your personality, your background fits into your uniqueness as a researcher as well. And then lastly, you want to close the loop. You want to actually practice research questions. You want to have someone to keep you accountable. This could be a coach, it could be a mentor, it could be a coworker, but you want to have someone that can also help you out through this process of practicing for the research interview, practicing different types of questions, hypothetical case studies, things like that. I actually summarized all of this into a checklist that you can find on my website, hopetalks.design. I hope you found this video useful, and if you want more videos and tips and packages around UX research, both how to get into the space and maybe how to just up-level your career as a researcher, and make sure to join my newsletter, join.hopetalks.design, and I'll be sharing monthly tips, jobs, and just general advice around this topic. I'll also be sharing more videos around UX research, so I am curious, what would you like to see? What are you curious about? Where are you in your journey? Are you a designer, a researcher? Are you transitioning from another field? Leave me a comment down below.